Hi again, and thanks for tuning into this new video here at the Museum Modelers channel. This is going to be another unboxing review, but it's going to be a bit different from the usual kind of reviews that I do here. Every other review that I have covered has been a military topic, aircraft carriers, tanks, etc. And while this new kit today might be classified as military, it's going to be of an entirely different genre, and it's of a subject that's particularly near and dear to my heart. You see, this is the General, the Locomotive General. It's a 440 steam engine, built in 1855, made famous because of an episode during the Civil War called the Andrews Raid. And this engine is actually still around. It's preserved in a museum not too far from here called the Southern Museum of Civil War and Locomotive History. And as you may have noticed, the name of this channel is The Museum Modeler. And I have stated on my page that I'm a curator. I am the museum curator for the Southern Museum, so taking care of the actual General, who turns 160 years old next month, taking care of that steam engine is one of my primary responsibilities, maintaining its preservation in the museum as a professional in the field. And so the chance to combine my job and my hobby is something that's really special to me. And so we're going to take a look at this kit, at the components that go into it, at its detail, at its construction, and I hopefully will be able to give you a somewhat different perspective into how the kit is going to go together, just based upon my familiarity with the actual Locomotive General. So come along, let's unbox it and see how everything comes together. Okay, here we have the kit itself, boxed up. Of course, you'll notice it's by MPC. It's a 1/25th scale. It's worth mentioning that this kit was originally released in 1980, and it's been reboxed and re-released by Round2. It hasn't been available from MPC for quite some time, and so now that it's back on the market, it still carries the MPC logo, but Round2 is going to be the producer and distributor. So here you have just a basic watercolor image of the engine. That's nice enough, I suppose. Let's take a look at the contents. We've got a white cardstock protector here, and then here everything is nice and boxed. So we'll start with the instructions. Instructions are usually pretty boring. In this case, I think they're a little bit more exciting than one might expect. You do have a quick synopsis of the Andrews Raid, the Civil War episode which made the engine famous when it was taken by Union raiders on April 12, 1862 in an attempt to destroy the Western and Atlantic Railroad. So this is the engine from that raid, and you've got a quick history of it here, which is more or less accurate. Open it up, and here are your decals. This is the same decal sheet as the original release. We have examples of this model in our museum's collection of the 1980 release, so I've seen it, and I can tell you that everything here is more or less identical. Also, I built this model as a kid with my dad, so there's that personal connection there. The decals are slightly different in that you have a wide array of numbers you can pick from. Locomotive numbers. Let me zoom in on that, give you a look at what I'm talking about. The General was number 3. She was so numbered by the railroad after the Civil War because she was the 3rd oldest engine in the fleet. But now you're being given a whole slew of numbers, so if you wish to make this another 440 style, American style engine, you could do so. There were about 25,000 engines of this type made before, during, and just after the Civil War, so there's a huge number of locomotives one could choose from. The General being the number 3, that's what we're going to be going with when we do build this. Zoom back out. Okay. So there's your decals. They're nice. They're in register. These are not by Cartograph. These are just Round2 production decals, it looks like. They're mostly stenciling and color bands for the tender. The tender is the wood card, has most of the fancy scroll work, as it were. You do have a couple of gauges here for the cab of the engine, which we'll talk about in a few minutes, and then of course W&ARR, which is the Western and Atlantic Railroad. The instructions are pretty straightforward. This box here slightly. One thing that I really like about these, though, is that in addition to part numbers, they give you descriptions of what you're looking at. So you know that this is a mounting plate, you know that This is the truck equalizer. When you get into the more complicated parts of the engine, you start talking about the Stevenson valve gear. Get all these descriptions as to what the components actually are. So it's not designed to be educational, but does give you a bit of a lesson as well into the workings of a steam engine. You get two options for doing the General. The first is going to be with the link and pin coupler, which was the Civil War design. The General had this until 1961. In 1961, the General was restored by the Louisville and Nashville Railroad for the Civil War Centennial, and to make it legal to drive the General on modern rails in the 1960s, they added a knuckle coupler. And so you have an option to do either a link and pin or a knuckle. The General currently has a knuckle coupler. Now, while I would prefer to do the General as it currently is displayed in the Southern Museum just because of the access I have to the prototype, I don't know if I'm going to be able to do that. Now, putting the knuckle coupler here on would be prototypical because that's what the General has. However, the other modifications that the railroad did to the locomotive in the 1960s are not included in this kit, and I'm not quite sure why. But the cab backhead, you get a plethora of accurate gauges, sight gauges, you get the throttle, the Johnson bar, your different valves. Unfortunately, you do not get the modern fuel gauges, which are on the left side of the cab. Those were added during the restoration when the General was converted to run on fuel oil. And so, unless you're willing to do a good bit of scratch building, you're not going to be able to display the General in its post-1961 configuration. Now, while that might seem like it's minutia because it's inside the cab, in the 60s, the General was also given air brakes. These are Westinghouse air brakes that are placed between the drive wheels. And you'll see that in the configuration that we have here, there is no making for air brakes. So again, this is going to be pre-1961 if you go that route. Just to add one more layer of confusion, however, this kit does include the water injector on the locomotive's right side, which was added in 61. So you're going to get, if you build this straight out of the box, you're going to get basically a mid-restoration locomotive that has a knuckle coupler and a modern water lifter injector on the right side of the engine. Does not have the fuel controls on the left side of the cab, and it does not have the air brakes. So it's a bit of a bastard version of the General. That's unfortunate, and that is my biggest gripe with this kit. Is that while the research was done extensively into the engine, there were just a couple of balls dropped in that regard. All right, so let's take a look at the sprues. These are the exact same sprues that were included in the original 1980 release. They were included in colored plastic then as well. It's actually open. My opinion is a bit mixed on the colored plastic. It's not necessary unless you're not going to paint it. And so in that regard, I see how this kit mimics the general feel of scale modeling in the 1970s and 80s when it was more of a family activity and it wasn't quite as, I hate to say professional because this hobby is not professional, but there weren't as many options for minutia and personal detailing as there are today. And so because of that, kits would often come in molded in color. This is going to be totally prime before it's painted, so the color is irrelevant. That said, it's nice, hard styrene, it's what you get with the kit. Detailing is good. This is 1/25th scale, and so you're going to get a lot of the riveting and regular details that you might lose on a smaller kit. It kind of has to be included in this, and it is, so no worries there. There's your balloon stack with your balloon stack cap. The rooster comb, which is the spiky bit that goes along the outside of the funnel, is a bit out of scale. So that's thickly molded, so you're going to want to file that down to get it a bit more in scale. I don't know if with the re-release, if Edward or anybody really is going to come out with a photo etch set for the General. That would be great if they did replace leaf springs and things of that sort. But I'm not going to hold my breath on that, so what you have is what you have. Here's your main locomotive frame. Your leaf springs, I don't think this is going to show up in this footage. I'll try it though. But the leaf springs are really well done. Let's see here. there, get it in focus. Yeah, so you actually do have the individual iron leaves are molded in here. Again, I don't know if you can see it, but trust me, this looks really good. This will pop really well with a wash, especially because the leaf springs are mostly painted gray on the actual engine, and so including a wash there is going to make those gaps pop out. You also have a nice wood texture here on the pilot beam. Oops, there we go. This is the piece at the front of the engine that the locomotive pilot, the cowcatcher, attaches to, and it's wood, and so you've got a nice wood grain built into there. Anti-slip treads on the walkway bar between the engine and the tender. So, I mean, there are not many gripes. There is the issue of not knowing which general you're going to build, but unless you're super picky, that's probably not going to matter to you. So you got very fine construction on your black plastic fret there. Let's take a look at this second black fret. Okay, this looks to be your tender. And here's your tender sides, your tender top. Now this is going to be worth taking a look at because the General's tender today is mostly a fuel tank. The wood sitting on top of the tender is decorative, and there's a large gas tank underneath. And yep, sure enough, this is the top of the tank. So again, this is going to be a mid-restoration engine because the tender in this version has already been converted to hold the General's fuel oil. But there you go with that. Here's your back head. Your electrical conduits are molded on. That is also a post-1961 edition. And then you've got what was probably going to be an accurate rivet configuration. I'll actually check this when I get to work one day, take a picture, bring it in or something, but that looks pretty darn accurate. Smoke box cover, your ornate Rogers Locomotive Works bell cradle is going to be there. And let's see, there's your firebox door, there's your Johnson bar, and the Johnson bar doesn't look to have an accurate number of slots. The bar itself, I don't have a number offhand, but there's 3 reverse slots, about 6 middle slots in the company notch, and then you've got a few in front. And let's see, I'm doing this upside down, so sorry about shimmying it around a bit. Let's see, there's the back head, there's the Johnson bar. So the notches in the Johnson bar are not entirely accurate. This is going to be tucked away in the cab, nobody's going to notice, but I would probably know, so grr. But you could certainly fill those in and simply cut new notches in with a razor saw. Probably what I'll do. I'm trying to zoom back out here. That's why you've got a big screen full of green. There it is. Alright. Here's your other tender components. There's your knuckle coupler. It looks pretty accurate. I mean, it's not the most accurate knuckle coupler ever, especially at this scale. That's a little bit disappointing, but it is what it is. The link and pin is good. They look more or less in scale. The link will need to be sanded and rounded a little bit, but it seems to be more or less in the proper scale. And then here's your tender bottom. Oh, the underside of the tender has nice wood detailing. The tender actually has this underneath, so that's good. That's something nobody's ever going to see, but you'll know it's there, which is important. Chains that are linking the engine and the tender, those would probably best be replaced with actual chain. At this scale, it'll be easy enough to find chain to do that. So, okay. All right, let's take a look at the red parts. These are the parts that are actually painted red on the engine. It's worth noting that the black parts are the ones that are either painted black on the engine or are iron, hence their coloring. But here's your cab components, your cowcatcher or pilot, it's your cab roof. Again, nice wood grain on that. This is really well done. I'm happy with that. I thought I was going to have to rough it up a bit, but I won't. I will have to rough up pilot. The actual arms of the cowcatcher are wood, and here they're nice and smooth. I wish they had done that the same as they did the cab roof and the tender components, but I guess you can't win them all. And then here's your drive wheels. These are 60 inches in reality, which would put them at 2.4 inches if we're looking at proper scale. And sure enough, these suckers come out to exactly 2.4 inches. So I am quite pleased that this kit is going to come out to being properly 1/25th scale. So that's a big plus. Gray parts. These are parts that are painted gray on the General in real life, with the exception of course, of all this wood in the tender. That's not bad. It's properly scaled. It's got nice texture. You might benefit from going and getting some sticks, cutting them up, freezing them, getting all the bugs out of them, and using actual wood. That's what we did when I was a kid. When I built this with my dad, it looked really cool. So that's something I'd recommend instead of using this, but hey, it's up to you. Running boards. These are molded on both sides with good wood detail. And you even have underneath the mounting braces that hold the boards to the sides of the boiler. Those are in reality a little bit banged up. That's why we don't let people on the running boards anymore on the General. So odds are if I want to make this look as close as I can to its current configuration, I'll have to distress that a little bit. You do have some injector pin marks. They're a bit deep, and the wood grain goes right through them, which to me is really weird because that means they would have molded the grain onto the injector pins or somehow carved it in afterwards. So I'm not an expert in styrene molding. It beats me as to exactly how that was done. But you have to fill them and then re-scribe your grain. Here are your tender trucks. These leaf springs have pretty good detail. These are not quite as fine as the springs on the Locomotive trucks. Don't ask me why, I don't know. But there you go. There are on the journal boxes these little 5-point stars, which are actually on the real engine. It's funny, people will ask me regularly, why are there stars on the journal boxes? You see one right there, right there. There's no reason, it's purely decorative. So many people assume it's some relationship to the Civil War or what have you, but no, it's just a design. And then here is your the front side of the wood that sticks out of the tender. Again, nice detail, but there's really no replacement for wood like wood. This is your counterweight for the Stevenson valve gear system. So, in fact, this is the whole gear right here. So this is going to give you a good introduction to the workings of a steam engine. If I remember correctly, these parts do move. Now, don't quote me on that, but I'm pretty sure they move. So even though it's a static model, you can push it and see how the valve gear system works in driving the drive wheels back and forth by using the cylinders and the pistons. But anyways, here's some more of the valve gear. These are actually not painted gray on the engine. These are, well, some of them are, but they're also black because they're underneath the boiler and the firebox mounts. So extensive prototype research is going to be necessary, which is great because I work there. There are only a few components left here. You got a base. The base looks like brown plastic, so not great on colors, but it's 2-part base. It's the running boards here, which, I mean, this guy's big. This is going to be, actually I have a measuring tape right here, so let's find out. When all is said and done, go. All said and done, this is a 26.5-inch model, so more than 2 feet displayed. I didn't point it out, but there are rails that are included here on the black fret. So you do have rails. Put these into your wood ties, and there you go. I don't know if there are aftermarket model train companies or model railroading companies that make 1/25th scale rails. These are molded fine, there's nothing wrong with them, but if you get actual metal rails that are in scale, that have the right code height, I mean, that'd be even better. And lastly, we have chrome pieces. I hate chrome because it's just a bear to work with when you've got styrene cement and you're trying to flow. Anyways, but these are your parts. These are the pieces that are actually brass on the engine. I have never de-chromed any piece of a model. I'm probably going to wind up trying this time though, because Again, I hate this. But regardless, these are your brass parts. Your nameplates are here. And these are well done. The General's nameplate is not quite brass. You know, I've never done a metallurgical test on it, obviously, but it looks like it's just painted gold with red lettering. So with this, you can simply, I'm sorry, the letters are gold, but the nameplate is brass. So you're gonna, let's back that up one last time. Nameplate letters are gold. The backing is red. Thank you. So you're going to spray red on here, and then before it dries, just sand it off, is what I'm trying to say. And that'll give you a really clean looking nameplate, which will pop there on the sides of the boiler. But what have you got? This is your water lifter injector, your steam dome. This is the front of your, actually no, this is the top of your sand dome right here. There's the top of your steam dome. There's the part of your smoke box, the number 3. And it does have the Western Atlantic Railroad Atlanta, Georgia lettering, so that's good. Looks to be in scale. Here are some cab components. There's your steam gauge. There's this little nameplate it comes with, the General, built by, and then it's blank. And the instructions say, use a Sharpie and write your name. I'm not going to do that, but you may want to if you want this to look a certain way. But there you go. 1/25th scale, 440 Locomotive General. There are problems with it. There are also really good things about this. You put a Lincoln pin coupler on it and ignore the lifter injector. You can have a good representation of the engine as it appeared for most of the 20th century when it was on display in Union Station in Chattanooga by the Nashville, Chattanooga, and St. Louis Railroad. So maybe I'll do that. I don't know. There's a famous lithograph of the engine on display there, where it's in front of some brick arches. I had hoped to duplicate the General Gallery in my museum for the display of this, but maybe I can duplicate the Chattanooga Gallery instead. We'll see. I haven't thought about it too much, but there you have it. It's a fun kit. This retails, MSRP is 74 or 84. I don't know. I got it a bit cheaper because I bought this version at our gift shop at the museum. I'm sorry, at our museum store. That's the proper term, the General Emporium. But you can pick it up at any hobby shop. I've seen it at Free Time Hobbies, at Hobbytown, and what have you. It's a great little kit. I remember fondly when I built it, and I'm going to really enjoy putting it together a second time once I find 2.5 feet of display space that aren't occupied by battleships. Alright, so thank you for watching this unboxing review here at the Museum Modelers channel. Put this here as closure. Check out the website, which is themuseummodeler.wordpress.com. Though lately all I've been doing are videos, so if you're watching the YouTube channel, if you're subscribed, then thank you for subscribing, and you're also all caught up. However, the Facebook page is where most of the action occurs. That's facebook.com/themuseummodeler. It's all one word with one L in modeler. But that's where we get regular updates. I must have put 5 or 6 different updates on there yesterday since I had a very productive time here at the workbench. And that way you can stay in touch with how builds are going. This one I'm not going to start just yet. Again, I want to wait till I've got plenty of room for it. But it won't be too far in the future because I've got the itch. Alright, so I believe that we have hit the end of this video looking at the timer on my camcorder. So let me wish you all a happy Sunday and a relaxing time at your bench, and happy modeling, everybody. Take care.